Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Training, Learning, and Development Communities Accessible and Inclusive Design Conference. We are in our final day. We have just 3 sessions left. I'm just checking to see if people are coming in. Yes, I'm seeing everybody. I don't know, Jeremy, your picture always stands out to me whenever I see it in the people tab here. And so let's see if you folks can go ahead and please just say hi in the chat. Daphne, good to see you again. Good morning from Sebastopol. I'm in Sebastopol as well, which is so crazy that the both of us are actually in the same town right now. Let's see, Stacy, Anna, Kara, hello everyone. We've got Shannon from Eugene, Jennifer, Donna. Thanks everybody again for attending our event. I have a couple housekeeping things. One, I just want to remind everybody, we've got 3 sessions today. We've got this one, and then we have another one at 10, and then the closing, I guess, sort of keynote that at noon with Jessica Michaels. And so keep that in mind. We still have, lots of sessions to go, or just this 3 today. So hopefully we'll see you in all of those as well. I do want to know on the site, if you can send me a message, or if you have any feedback whatsoever. Doing these week-long events is something that I started, I think maybe it was last year. I don't know if that's too much, if the scheduling is works out for you, if you like having the long breaks in between. I'm kind of thinking about, from a learner perspective, just being able to reflect between sessions, taking the time to be able to absorb all of the content. It's not something that is typical, I think, out there, but for myself, and having done this for so long, I've always felt like if you just throw everything, all this content at everybody in like 1 or 2 days, it's just too much. And so I do like to separate it. And I know we all have busy schedules, and so you don't have to attend every single session. The recordings are there. You can go back and check them out later, but I do like breaking it up, but maybe it's the wrong thing. So if you can send me a message via the AirMeet platform, and I'll take a look at it. Or even if you're part of our Slack group, reach out, say hi, let me know what you think. Or even on LinkedIn, you can find me there. I would love to hear from you and what you think. And then lastly, one pitch: if you want to support what we're doing at TLDC, please consider a membership. We sell them. They're $75 a year. I try to do a live event like this every single month. Plus, during the week, we actually do regular conversations with other folks in L&D, instructional designers, people that are part of the community. We just talk about their journey, or we talk about specific topics, talk about tools, we talk about ideas, methodologies, different things throughout the week. We do lots of stuff. And it really does help having or being able to pay the bills, and me not asking my wife, is it okay if we drop a few $100s in the bank account to pay for whatever? So please, if you do have any budget or at all, support TLDC. You can go to thetldc.com and you could join as a member, and you get access to all the gated content that I have on there. So that's it. That's my pitch. I don't usually do that, but I figure I better do that this time, because we might be planning a live event for next year, and I'd like to be able to accomplish that. And so with that, the star of the show for this session this morning, Rebecca Prejean, who is going to be talking about navigating visual branding, designing accessible e-learning experiences for inclusivity. A little bit about Rebecca. Rebecca is a seasoned learning experience designer with vast expertise in instructional design, tool proficiency, and impactful learning program creation. She's going to be at DevLearn this fall, speaking in Las Vegas. Looking forward to that. Might be there myself, and would love to see Rebecca when I'm there. Demonstrating leadership in her role as a learning manager and possessing a rich experience across various industries, she champions multimedia's role in enhancing learning outcomes and brings innovation to each project. And so, Rebecca, with that, I'm going to go ahead and hide myself from the screen and let you take it away. Thank you again for taking the time to share with us. I really appreciate you being here. And I'm going to hide.
Awesome. So just so everybody knows, I'm super appreciative of the opportunity, Louise, Cindy, to have put this together. And it's really actually been very beneficial for me. As Louise mentioned, I've actually been in the e-learning, learning and development, kind of world for right over about 10 years. Prior to that, I actually worked in graphic design and web design. So I've done a little bit of everything from instructional design, development, some coding, some painting, all of the things. And so, in truth, what we're really going to talk about today is something that's very, very, very important to me, visual branding and accessibility. Having worked in a lot of corporate environments, some startup environments, some nonprofits, there are definitive things that continue to come up as barriers for people with accessibility. Part of the reason that I chose this topic and why it's such a focus for me is that I actually have a son who is 7 and he is autistic. For a very long time, we knew that he was different. We just didn't have a name for his difference or for his diagnosis. In general, he was around 1 years old when I figured out that he was different. And so as we've gone through and tried to get his accommodations and tried to work through a system that is really not built for people like him, it became very, very clear to me that even though he's a child going through this, there are adults who go through this as well on a regular basis. We interact with them, we see them. Sometimes they don't really want to self identify because some of the different things that are out there, some of the judgment that's out there. And this topic, this area, accessibility, is just so important for me because, as I mentioned, I've watched him be ignored. I've watched him be mistreated in many situations, left to be on his own, and also kind of looked at as less than. And so for me, I decided I was going to find ways to speak to people like him with those differences through my work. It was a healing type of thing for me, but it was also what I felt I could do to kind of better the world and, to just kind of make things a little bit more inclusive for folks like him. Um, yeah, like it's a very deep thing. And as I was telling Louise earlier, I've actually never really spoken about his disability, not because we're ashamed of it, but because it's such a deep personal, thing that's there. So in general, I make learning for adults because that's what I'm comfortable with. But in my mind, everything that we develop as instructional designers, as e-learning developers for adults, people like Ethan will be able to use in the future. And working in a bunch of corporate environments, people treat folks like that different. So for me, this is a really, really important topic. And I really wanted to spend some time just talking to you guys about some of the things that I've learned over time. Um, as with most things, nothing in life is perfect. So please know that I'm going to give you the wealth of knowledge that I have from my experiences. You may have different ways of doing things, completely okay. In my mind, it's all about the purpose and the goal. We're all working towards the same goal. So even if we get there different ways, it's okay, right? Because our whole goal is what? Getting people exactly what they need it, how they can digest it, and how it can work best for them. So, with that being said, let's dive on in to what we've got today. So, what we're going to do, what we're going to talk about, I've split it into my mind 3 different sections: the what, the why, and the how. So, pretty clear cut, right? We're going to talk about what visual branding really is, what it entails, and why it's important. I know that everybody's like, well, I understand visual branding. I promise you, there will be some knowledge here and some value to it. Because when we're trying to understand why it's so hard and why it feels so difficult to get people to want to do accessibility in more corporate kind of red tape environments, it's important that you understand where their hesitation is coming from. That way you can actually speak to it when you're trying to get that yes and when you're trying to push through those barriers, right? So we're also going to talk about the why it affects accessibility in general. And then we're going to talk about some hows, how visual branding and accessibility can coexist, because they can. It is not always easy. It's not always fun. It's not always filled with the things that we should be doing necessarily in a world where accessibility is for everyone. Sometimes it's a little difficult, but we're going to talk about how to move past that and how to kind of push through a few of those barriers that you might find. So let's start off talking about visual branding. Just out of curiosity, and you guys can just answer in the chat real quick. When I say visual branding, what's the first thing that comes to mind? If you had to give this a definition, what would it be? I'm going to give a minute or so for folks to just type in. advertising, feel, yep, logo. I've designed logos, so definitely a real thing that's there. Yeah, consistency, marketing, all the things, right? Color scheme, themes, seeing marketing again. And you guys are all right. So when we talk about visual branding, it is really that. Somebody touched on something though that a couple of you touched on it. Look and feel, telling a story, right? These are all things that people want to actually convey through visual branding. So you have internal branding, you have external branding, but a lot of corporations, believe it or not, do want their internal and their external brand to match. And that can mean the colors, that can mean the logo, that can mean the layout, the style of the images, these emotions that, things can evoke. And sometimes when we are dealing with branding, we don't really even understand what's happening because it really pulls from the subconscious. So when we break down what visual branding really is, I call it an art form. If you haven't noticed, I love art. I've been drawing since I was like 5. So everything to me that is visual is an art form because these people are sitting down and they're really kind of analyzing how can I get an emotion out of someone? How can I get them to buy product X, right? Or make them go to my store? Or if you're Apple, how can I get them to buy this $1,400 iPhone just because it's an Apple iPhone for no other reason, right? All these things are psychological. So when you talk about brand recognition, we talk about visual branding, it really does draw on that subconscious factor that we're not even aware of, and it evokes emotions without us even knowing. Colors. So if you're thinking, for example, you see bright, shocking colors, think neon pink or bright yellow, they not only stand out from the crowd, but they also give you emotions like excitement, happiness, joy. They push energy into you. They give you that burst of energy that you kind of want to feel. On the other hand, you have some of these more sleek brands, right? That might do calming colors like green, light blue, maybe some gray or some black. Softer impact. It makes your audience feel safe and in good hands. I often think of the Allstate logo. It is blue, and they have that wonderful, wonderful little tagline, right? You're in good hands, or yeah, I want to say it's you're in good hands, not safe hands, but it makes that all true when we start to think of it. But when we start to kind of even go a little further, somebody mentioned fonts. Fonts actually can evoke emotions. So you have things like serif fonts, small strokes at the end of the letters, more traditional, formal, authoritative, a little bit more professional. And then you have things that are like script. So you have elegance, creativity, warmth. All of these things play into visual branding. Even if you have a card, for example, if we're talking about fonts for a minute, if somebody gives you a Valentine's Day card, has nice little elegant scripted font, maybe a couple of hearts, you feel happiness, you feel comfort. But if I give you that same Happy Valentine's Day card, same message, all of those things, but it has like the liquid drips on it that kind of look like blood, you're going to feel distressed. I would feel distressed anyway, disturbed, or possibly even ready to call somebody for some help because there's something not quite right there. All of these small details are going to matter. I just saw Donna's message. I'm a definitive font snob. No problem, Donna. Completely get it. So when you're looking at all of these things, right, and you're really thinking about them in a kind of more holistic way, I want you to also think about the consistency that it brings, right? You're looking at a revenue increase of up to 33%. For folks in corporate America, what is it all about? It is about the bottom line. We always don't want to talk about it. We always kind of want to keep it hidden or secret, but money talks in corporate America, right? So they really want that consistent visual branding there so that they can increase their revenue, increase their brand recognition, and essentially garner success, right? If you also start thinking about how much these people pay, I have been involved in branding. I've also been involved in rebranding. And I have had small clients that pay about $15,000 just for initial branding. I've had them pay about $30,000. I have seen one or two go above that for initial branding. but that's a lot of money just to make sure that your brand is consistent and you have a cohesive branding strategy. If we go a step further than that, however, and we talk about rebranding, things can automatically get much more, cost increases, right? So we can actually end up costing, I said $150,000 in this presentation, but it can actually be anywhere from 150 to 175. So when somebody in corporate America is thinking about their branding, no, they're not thinking about accessibility, clearly, in most cases, but they are very intentional about what they're doing. There's a lot of time that goes into that. There's a lot of money that goes into that. And again, time is money for corporate folks. So when we start talking about how this actually goes into effect for accessibility, it creates barriers, right? Because in their minds, there are several things that are happening, several concerns, several, I'll call them pain points at this point, because for them, that's what they are, right? So one of these is perception. Perception is powerful. I think everybody in this session can probably agree with that. But about 21 to 22% of C-suite members view accessibility as a never-ending task. A lot of corporations want kind of a one and done. I want to make sure that it's done. I want to make sure that it's done right. I want to make sure that it's done one time. All of us know, I believe I have a part about that a little later, Michelle. But if I don't, I actually have resources for everybody um, at the end of this. So no worries. I will definitely answer that. But what we're talking about is perception and that power of perception. To them, they want a one and done. They're like, I want it done right. I want it done the first time. And in addition to that, I don't really want to have to go back and revisit this. We all know accessibility is ever changing. As more awareness is brought to it, as we discover more tools, as we, learn more about what technology can do for us, even AI, things are going to change. Our language changes every day, almost every month, to some extent, right? So obviously things are going to change. This is not a one and done type of situation. You have to actually invest over the long term. And some people don't want to do that. Especially when we're talking about, well, I've paid all this money. Why do I now have to go back and do these things? I'm not saying it's right, but I am saying that that is some of the thought process that's there. Consistency. We've already talked about it, right? Part of the power of branding is consistency. And it's one of those situations where in their minds, they see accessibility as a challenge to this consistency. So if I am building something that's accessible, obviously I have to have different things, different parameters to make this inclusive. And in their minds, whether it's right or wrong, they are thinking, well, that is going to hurt my consistency. That's going to hurt my brand awareness and recognition. And I don't want to mess with that when I've already paid all this cash. And then we're talking about restrictions, right? Which kind of goes with consistency a little bit, because in their mind, they're like, this is what I want it to be. Here is my 50-page brand guideline, because I know we've all seen some brand guidelines that are like dictionaries, but here is my brand guideline. And I want this to be essentially the only thing that you use. I don't want to have to change it. I've paid tons of money for it. I've talked to a lot of people about it, and this is what it needs to be. And these are all barriers to what we as designers, as developers, are really trying to do with our folks, the people that we care about and the people that we want, to actually help and assist and make them successful. So as you are, if you're happening to work in a corporate environment and you are kind of frustrated by what you're encountering, always remember that a lot of this that we're seeing here is what they're thinking. And so for me, part of what has helped me in the past is trying to understand where these folks are coming from. Because initially, I'm thinking to myself, I don't understand you. Why wouldn't you want everybody to just have what they need and get what they need out of this e-learning? But there's really a lot of just hidden pain points for them that we have to kind of speak to when we're trying to get that yes and we're trying to push through those things. So let's talk a little bit about creating harmony. And so I know that we don't have a ton of time today, but I'm going to hit some high points about the things, like I said, that have worked for me, and hopefully some things that you can take away. Um, let's see where we go here. So I've broken this into 3 different kind of steps. I felt like this is kind of the easiest way to digest some of the things that I do on a regular basis. I believe in advocating, incorporating, and creating, and generally in that order. And we're going to talk about what all these things mean in my world and in my process and in my method. But I believe in trying to give people the benefit of the doubt at the onset, because again, they don't know what they don't know. People who do not have the experiences that some of us have not encountered some of the folks that have really enriched our lives, changed our perspectives. They just don't know. Full disclosure, when I first got into learning and development, I actually got in a little bit by accident. I feel like learning and development found me. I was working at a corporate place. My boss actually ended up quitting. They were the trainer. And so, like, the manager of the department asked me to train folks. Okay, I'll do that. Sounds great. Sounds fun. Sounds like something new. I did it and I loved it. And I ended up creating like their entire L&D program, created all of their e-learning, all of their learning paths. I stayed there for quite a while and literally loved every minute of it. One regret that I have, and I don't have a lot of regrets in my life, I tend to run with it, so to speak. The one regret that I have is that when I was training, I was not aware. So this was before I had my son. This was before I had really even met somebody who was really dyslexic or had autism. That's just not something that I had met in my life or had been identified to me. Looking back at it, I probably grew up with some folks that, you know, were neurodivergent. I just didn't know, and they weren't really talking about it, which is fine. That's not their fault. I should have been more aware. But that is the one regret that I have, because I would create things, and I would create things through a lens of my own. So if somebody was struggling with learning, if they were struggling with e-learning, I could not understand, I could not conceptualize why they were having trouble with it. It is not my shining moment, but that is my truth. And that is a lesson that I learned over time. And it has really actually helped me to understand a lot of people in terms of, you don't know what you don't know. And if sometimes you don't seek to be aware, if you don't seek to know more, I mean, you're always going to be closed off. So when you're dealing with folks in corporate, it's important to remember some of them are just like I was. They just did not come in contact with that, or they just weren't aware of it. And it just wasn't, they just weren't being aware. They weren't awake. But you can actually bring that to them. You have the power, you have the unique position, being in learning and development, instructional design, you know, being a developer, to get them, you know, over that bridge and to bring that information to them. So I definitely believe in starting with an educate and propose type of feel. And then if that maybe doesn't work for whatever reason, we have a couple of other ways to go. So let's talk about those for just a little bit. So let's talk about advocating. Like I said, this for me is the ideal course of action. I do focus on the bottom line because, again, you want to bring feeling, you want to bring emotion, but corporate people are bottom line, usually very, give me kind of the bullet points, the with them, the what's in it for me's, right? Well, changed a little bit. Okay. That's really where they kind of live. So you want to definitely speak to them about the benefits that it will give for their people, but we also want to just be real about this is what it can do for you as a company as well. Yes, you can talk to them about legal ramifications. We all know that there are laws involved. However, if they really, really cared about legal ramifications and really were well versed on that, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation with them in the first place. So while you can definitely mention that, and I've seen people try to make that like the focus of their, kind of pitch to people, try to, not to say avoid it because you don't want to avoid it, but try to kind of also put some more in it, put some more meat in it, right? So corporate benefits, the cost involved, that kind of thing. For me, I always like to say accessibility is not only going to help, your team members, it's going to help the company, because essentially what you're looking at is internally, if people are taking e-learning, maybe they need accessibility, they're not getting to know what they need to know, whether that's from a compliance standpoint, a process standpoint, an organizational standpoint, whatever the case may be. Depending on their interaction with clients, customers, whether that's inside or outside of the business, that is going to impact the company. It's going to impact the company image, and therefore can cost or increase revenue, right? So when you actually put it in that kind of perspective, most of them, the ones I have interacted with, tend to latch onto that a bit more, because in their minds, they can see a connective tissue from point to point to point. Yes, I agree with you, Donna. So let's say they're just like, yeah, so that sounds really great, but we need this done. And, I'm not willing to really invest in that thought process right now. It has happened. It's not great, but hey, we as artists, as I'll call us today, sometimes we have to play with the tools that we are given. So for me, I've also started to build accessibility into my time estimates. Whether you are a freelancer, whether you are corporate, whatever the case may be, there's always going to be a needs analysis to this. And needs analysis also means time. Some of us tend to be a little bit more hesitant when people give us a deadline or a timeline and they say something has to be done by this time. But part of being good in business is setting realistic expectations. And that is a hurdle that I definitely had to surpass. I was known at the beginning of my career for being the, you know what? I need this done in 4 days and it needs to be a 30-minute e-learning. Okay, I'll do that. Completely bananas. Because they always want like a video and all of the things. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm not going to sleep for like the next 3 or 4 days. And you pump that out, but it's really unrealistic expectations. So over time, and I know everybody has been where I just mentioned I was, over time, you get to learn that setting realistic expectations is the true key, right? You have the ability, you have the power to actually voice your needs for your timeline. And you can include building accessibility into that. Whether or not they're they're completely open to fully, invest in it, not a big deal from your perspective. Your goal is to always try to find a way, try to find an in. Because once you get an in and you start to show people this can work, you just have to show them sometimes, right? Sometimes people need to see it in reality. I have family members like that. I'll tell them about this great idea I have, and they look at me like I'm nuts. And then I'll show them, no, this is really what we can do with this. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me now. It's the same concept with this. Sometimes you're going to have to build this into your time estimate organically and be like, I need additional time so I can make sure this, and this is done. Um, I've also kind of omitted some details for folks so that, hey, it's almost like I'm a ninja to some extent. I'm going to do this stealth. You're not even going to know it's happening until you see the actual product. And we're going to talk about how that works as well, because while you're dealing with visual branding, again, you don't want to necessarily, how can I put this? jeopardize the integrity of the visual branding for the company. I use jeopardize just as a word, not because I think it's a jeopardizing situation. And so let's talk about creating. This is my, if all else fails, become a design ninja. That is what I have labeled myself over the last couple of years, right? Because sometimes, like I mentioned, you might have to do this in a way that we shouldn't have to deal with. I fully admit that there are times where I say to myself, I shouldn't have to go through all of these things, right? I shouldn't have to go through and use all these crazy programs or use all this stuff to do this. But I want you all to think of the person sitting in a cubicle. And I say a cubicle because I used to work in a call center many years ago, folks. Fun times. But sitting in their cubicle, needing accessibility in their e-learning, and they don't want to tell anybody about it because the atmosphere is not welcoming. There's no real options for them, and they don't really have the ability to just leave their jobs, right? Those are the folks that we really want to make sure we take care of. And so for me, I definitely believe that there are things that we should not have to do. Our world should be much more inclusive. It should be much more beautiful and much more welcoming. Unfortunately, that's not the reality that we live in. And so I truly believe that becoming more than a designer is sometimes what we have to do. It's not always about what we shouldn't have to do. Sometimes it's what we have to do to reach the people that we want to reach. So we're going to talk very briefly because I can't give like a full blown seminar about some of this stuff. But I use a lot of storyline in corporate land. Everybody loves articulate storyline. I know I can hear some of the inaudible groans about storyline and some of their non-existent accessibility features, but there are ways to get around it. And sometimes, again, we have to play with the clay that we're given. So options can include, of course, layering, triggers, and then outside asset development. Again, as a graphic designer, these are the things that spoke to me because they spoke to my history. They spoke to my experience as a web designer, as a graphic designer. Exactly. Everybody deserves the best that we can produce. Like, I could not agree more, Dawn. So I always believe in bringing friends to a party. In my head, when I am working on a storyline project with accessibility, and I know that it might be for the long haul, I'm like, it's time to bring my friends with me. So JavaScript, CSS, HTML, I love using them. They are great, great companion pieces to articulate storyline. Now, I'm not expecting everybody in here to become like a master coding person. Nothing of the sort, but there are some basic things that you can learn that will really help you, that can really help you to essentially just get a little bit more comfortable with it and also understand that this can give you some more flexibility. Remember, there's not just one way to do things, right? So even as I'm telling you this today, if you don't necessarily, you're like, Rebecca, hold up. I don't know about this JavaScript. I don't know about this HTML kind of thing. I'm not sure if I want to touch this. I'm going to tell you now, I'm not a science whiz, nor am I a math whiz. I designed websites out of necessity back in the day because I needed the money, quite frankly. And it's the one thing that spoke to me in terms of art. So even learning like a little bit about tags, a little bit about just basic function will still help you. And it will be another tool in your tool belt. So what can coding do if you use it in articulate storyline? It can do a lot of things. And so I want you to just start thinking about this stuff because if nothing else, I want to just give you another tool, like I said, and make you kind of think, get your juices running a little bit about, maybe I will try to learn a little bit about this. Doesn't have to be overnight, can absolutely be over time, not a big deal. So it can actually improve colorblind accessibility. you can change the colors in your storyline. So it actually will contrast better. You can use it through buttons. I know some people are like, well, can't I do that with triggers and layers? You can, but sometimes that becomes a little difficult. It becomes a little time consuming. And again, we want to also try to not alter the original branding guidelines, if that makes sense. So we want to give people options. We don't necessarily want to, just kind of wipe away what the people in the C-suite want. We want to be able to try to get in that sweet spot, if that makes sense. So you can actually change player colors to accommodate accessibility. Again, kind of that contrasting feature. And it can improve your overall accessibility. So you can modify fonts, modify types, sizes, modify objects you can import into Storyline, modify background image, and it can assist in creating accessible interactions, which I know, and I'm sure most of us will agree, can be a little daunting sometimes if you're doing it natively in Storyline. So overall, my goal with coding has always been to save time and keep that original branding intact because, again, that is what people want. That is what people tend to focus on. I'm going to see if I can pop something up real quick. Let me see. Okay. So something that I did just last night. Let me see if this will work at all. Okay, so it's not going to work because that's the kind of Friday that I'm having. But I'm actually going to share something with you guys at the end of this, if I can get emails and things, so you can see what I created. But what I ended up making was just kind of an example of JavaScript. I have some codes that are already listed or written out for certain things that I'm going to give folks access to once this is all said and done. But that way you kind of have something to start from, if that makes sense. You don't have to create it all on your own. But it's just some best practices. And, this stuff will be accessible, like Louis said, after this presentation. Learning about your labels when you are executing JavaScript or HTML, yeah, is going to be probably the main thing. If you decide to go through some of these Code Academy courses, some of the Coursera courses, really focus on making sure that you know your labels. Or, as some of you may hear it said, tags, right? So if you've seen code, I think a lot of us have seen code at the very least, even if we don't know what's happening in between. You see the brackets, right? And you'll see like body, you'll see text, you'll see all these different things. Really focusing in and learning what those are will be a very key thing for you, because that's how you're essentially talking to Storyline. You're telling it, I need you to do this and only this, please. So it's like you're going to a restaurant and there's all these different options and you can do all these different modifications, but you really want to make sure that you are zeroing in on that so that you get exactly what you're trying to get out of it. Using coding when it makes sense. I love a good code. Most people who have designed websites at all, they love some coding. We'll create coding for things that sometimes don't make any sense, just for fun. But in the world of accessibility, just know that you don't need to use it all the time. You have to analyze it. You have to use it, I don't say sparingly, but very intentionally to make sure that you're not creating more problems rather than good. Because there are definitely some things, if you're using too much JavaScript, if you're using too much of the coding, that can be problematic, right? Because not everything is perfect, as I say here. Things go wrong with code. That's why there's a whole gaggle of people in corporate America whose main job is to make sure that code works and works properly, because sometimes it's going to break. So as you're going through learning some of this coding, I really want you to also focus on just remembering that things aren't perfect. Things change. Let's see. And just want to round out with some resources. I do see your question, Deborah. I'm going to answer it in just a second. So additional resources, as I call them. Free coding resources. I actually learned through, like I said, just some of my own knowledge. I am, for everybody that's wondering, I am not the super college educated one. Not because I couldn't hack it, but simply because I'm a creative. And so, school for me, though I was good at it, I got good grades, it was very difficult for me because I always wanted to daydream and draw on my worksheets in elementary school and write in my textbooks and draw in my textbooks. Like I was always kind of just in the creative world. And so for me, it was easier and more appealing to go do essentially and make my life that way. So please know you do not have to be super, super just, into this stuff. But again, it is a tool, it is a resource. I ended up just reading, looking at Google, looking at YouTube, that kind of thing. I have absolutely referred people to Code Academy. Code Academy, as some people are saying in the chat, is phenomenal, if that makes sense. So please check that out. Most of their stuff is free and you learn so much, not even just like HTML coding, but you can learn a whole bunch of dev stuff that who knows, maybe one day you want to transition this into something else, actually making platforms for accessible needs. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I won't be doing that, but maybe you can. And then there are also optional resources. So like I mentioned, I'm going to actually see if I can share a link to a Google form so I can get some email addresses, or you guys are free to go to my LinkedIn profile, DM me, give me your email address, and I will send you my sheets. So I have a lot of different sheets. I actually have some infographics that will kind of help you with scenarios about how to pitch accessibility to folks in the C-suite, because you do it a lot after a while and you get comfortable with it. So I have some of that, but then I also have some coding, like I said, that I would be happy to share with everybody. Some HTML tips, because I know, like I said, this is more high level today, but I want everybody to have something to jump off of, essentially. And then I'm also, yay me, I'm writing an ebook about this topic as well. So if you give me your email address, it should be releasing in the next 3 weeks. I will happily share a copy of it for free. So you can read all the things and get some really great information out of it. Ultimately, what I want everybody to know on this call is that visual branding can be a barrier, yes, but we, like I mentioned earlier, are able to get through things that other people cannot. We absolutely have unique positions, unique gifts to make sure that whatever we create is accessible. It's not always going to be the easiest thing in the world, but we are the ones that really have to advocate and be the champions for accessibility when we're talking about corporate, when we're talking even about startups that have no idea about accessibility. We are the ones that really have to be at the forefront of that change. People don't know what they don't know. And so we have to make it so they do know and so that they're aware. Questions that anybody may have. Let me see. Make sure I didn't. I actually, for Deborah's question, I actually have a friend who created an application that I embed in some of my work for accessibility reviews. How can I put this? I'm going to reach out to them to make sure it's okay, but I can actually share that information too. Once you get into this world, you end up with some of the nerdiest friends, but like the best friends to have on the whole planet. I love having a good developer friend in the pocket. Other questions, any at all? And you can always email me too if you're like, I don't have a question now, but I might have one later. Abby, that is a new one. I have not seen that, but I am happy to check that out. Cool. I don't doesn't seem like we have any other questions coming
Yeah,
in,
I'm
Mary.
checking it out. I'm looking. You've just shared so much great information, and of course, also in the chat, there has been a lot of great information shared as well.
Yes.
Um, I love all this stuff. I just want to mention I work for O'Reilly Media as my day job, and not to pitch like another business or anything. Well, I guess I am pitching another business, but O'Reilly has some incredible stuff. But I think it's a little bit more advanced for coders. But if you just go to O'Reilly.com, you could look at them there. Accessing that stuff is a little more pricey, but there are sales every once in a while, but it is a great resource for anything that for any web devs out there, anybody that's into, programming, machine learning, things like that. Oh, and there is your form. Thank you, Rebecca.
Yes. No, thank everybody so much. Like the participation was amazing. Like
Mhm.
you said, there's great information in this chat. A lot of amazing people hanging out with us today.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Rebecca, thanks again for taking the time out to share with us. Really appreciate your participation. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you again. Everybody, if you are heading to DevLearn, you do the live conference thing and you're going to be in Las Vegas, make sure you seek out Rebecca and say hi. And good luck there with your session. I might be there as well, so we'll see what happens. But thanks again. So everybody, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern. We have our next session coming up. That one is going to be with Alan Natachu. He's going to be back. He's going to be talking about AI and with a focus on the accessibility and learning part of what AI means to all of us, which I'm very very intrigued by. He has a few guests like Chris Paxton McMillan is coming back, Bela Gayton is coming back, Michael Yashi, who is a comic book artist and somebody who's been in LED for a really really long time, amazing guy. Michael should be there as well, and yeah, I'm probably going to be geeking out on that one. So hopefully we'll see you at 10. And it is a relevant conversation. So please try to attend that one if you can. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out the session. Thanks again, Rebecca. And we'll
Thanks,
see everybody in
guys.
the next one.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.